Okay guys, so here's a quick update on what I've been doing with CodeSmash for the past week, and I'm gonna go and talk about some other things as well. But before that, I just want to mention that currently, yeah, you know that I've released CodeSmash at least 2 signups last week, so now I've got I think it's 38. Yeah, 38 signups, and I think that's amazing, taking into account that I've used no ads whatsoever to gain these users, and even better, the fact that I don't actually have any features released yet, right? So as of now, you know that you can only just play in the playground with the templates, the UI, and that's pretty much it. Yet 38 people decided to sign up, so thanks for that. Oh, and one more thing. Where is it? Oh yeah, here you go. So the YouTube channel, there's 31 subscribers right now. So I think that's awesome considering I've got only 8 videos for now. In any case, yeah, let's talk about what I did last week. Like I said, I was gonna work on Git integration. So CodeSmash is supposed to use Git to pull the code from the repositories that are going to be in your AWS account and store the code as well. So what it's going to store is basically the config file that's going to be used to set up the infrastructure. And I was actually able to get that to work. It's still not integrated, right? Still not integrated into the actual UI, but that's not all that important right now because that's easy to do. If you remember, I can already extract the JSON. I just need to send it over to the API, and it's going to be converted into that YAML file that I showed you last time. So that's fine. So yeah, so let's just have a look at how this thing works. Let's go to the repositories that I have. Okay, here I've just prepared a new repo. It's called demo repo, as you can see, and even if I refresh, right, so it's completely empty, right? So it says here it's an empty repository. Like I said, we're going to be storing some code, Terraform code, that's going to be used to set up the infrastructure, plus the config file that CodeSmash will use in order to set up the infrastructure in the way you want it, right? So it's basically just going to contain the parameters that Terraform is going to use. In any case, we now need to populate, right? We need to populate this repo with some data, and we're going to do that using Git. So here's the repo. So you basically just take the URL to the repo. In this URL I have the new repo, so let's just use the demo repo instead. And as for the config, you can see I have the JSON file here. I'm gonna use this, and let's give it a shot. I'm gonna save this quickly, test, and let's see how it's working. Okay, it's already done. So it succeeded. Let's go here and refresh quickly. Yeah, so as you can clearly see, we have a file now in our repo called code.smash. So if I go here, and there it is, our CodeSmash config has been saved into the repo. So this is fine. This is working, and you can clearly see that it's been correctly formatted, and it's basically a YAML file. What else? Let's try to edit this somewhat. So instead of saying new stack here, and this item is called hello there. Let's just call it. So that's here, right? You can see that it also updates stuff. Awesome. Code and an awesome API. Right. Let's just save this, test. And it's done. So let's quickly just refresh. Yeah, and as you can clearly see, awesome code and awesome API. So this is clearly working, right? Why am I using this in? Why am I using Git instead of just saving this into the database? You might be asking yourself. Well, it's actually quite simple. I mean, if I were just to save this into the database, you wouldn't have a history of who changed what, right? So Git is used by developers to make sure that you don't overwrite each other's code. Let's say that several developers are working together and you need to keep track of who's doing what. This is why it's very important to use Git in modern software development, right? So especially if you're doing DevOps, which is basically what I'm setting up now, a DevOps environment, right? So as soon as someone changes the code inside the repo, it's going to trigger a pipeline, right? This build pipeline is going to automatically build your infrastructure, and then you're pretty much done. So this is now working. Like I said, the only thing that I have to do now, I need to connect it to the UI. Okay, so now that I've shown you this, let's have a look at the code and see what is it that I actually did here. Okay, so we're passing in. So this is the Lambda that's going to be executing everything that's needed in order for this to work, right? So as I mentioned last time, this is being executed in an AWS Lambda, which is a serverless function, which means it's not costing you anything unless you're invoking the code, as opposed to other servers that are costing you money all the time, even regardless of whether you're using them or not. So currently I'm passing in, let's go to, okay, so the config is here and you have the parameter, the config here. I'm obviously going to log the entry into this method. Currently I'm just hard coding the username and the password for Git, right, for the Git access. I'm making sure that the config is called code.smash. So CodeSmash is going to know exactly what to pick up once it takes your repository and starts checking it for some Terraform code in order to build your infrastructure. So here's what we need to do at this point. Okay, so we take the repository, right, from the arguments, and we have to split it in two ways. First is the slash, and the second is the double slash. Why are we doing this? Okay, so the first slash is clearly going to split this here string, the repo string, into several parts, and we just need the last. As you can clearly see here, we're taking the last. If we do that, we're clearly taking the name of the repo, so we place it here. The second part is where we do the double slash, right? And the reason is we just want to remove this part here, right? Okay, so the reason why we're doing that is because we need to transform actually this URL into something that's actually workable for Git, right? We need to get the data from Git, and we need to push the data to the Git repository as well. But for that, we need some credentials, right? So like I said, we need a username and password. So like I said, we need to take some credentials and put them here in front of the URL in order for Git to authenticate us and let us save to the repository. So here's how we do it. We basically take the first part, which is HTTPS. We need to add the double slash, and then we just place the user and the password, and then we return the second part. So that's the full URL now. Okay, so for this part here, this might seem strange, but it's basically just a fluent interface that allows me to execute Unix commands, right? So it's basically just creating a shell script. So instead of me writing this down and having a bunch of strings here, I'm just calling methods. And I'll show you how this is done. So if you actually do this, it might take a while to build this, right? I'm just returning a new object called shell service. You might be thinking, it's too much work, but at some point I'm probably going to be using this a lot, so it's best to do some work up front, and then later on it's going to be much easier. So as you can clearly see, I just have one enum, right? And if you go here, it's basically just strings that are Unix commands, and you place them here. And for example, for the cat command, obviously you want to print something out. Make sure you put your file name here, and then you add it to an array of strings, right? Once that's done, you just go here, and you can clearly see that if you want to execute something, so if you go here, you will see that the last command is exec, which means execute, and the only thing it's going to do is just going to take all the commands that you've invoked and concatenate them. After that, it just goes to the shell and synchronously executes everything. Then it clears all the commands, right? So it's much easier to work now than just typing it all as strings. So the first thing that we actually need to do is delete all the data from the temporary storage. So even though every time you invoke a Lambda function, you're starting from a blank slate, the fact of the matter is that the Lambda service might choose to reuse the container, even though it doesn't use it for concurrent executions, but it still might use the container that has been started up previously. So it's best to just go back to the temp folder and delete all files, because this is where we will be working. And the reason why we can't work in the initial position in our Lambda is because it's a read-only system. So you have to go back to the temp directory, right? So then we go to our temp directory, we print everything out, the contents, so just that we can see what we have, and then we go with the git clone, right? We take the URL and we completely clone the Git repository. Then we make sure to enter into the repository itself, and then you should just set up the Git, right? You have to do this every time because, like I said, once you've executed your Lambda function, it just shuts everything down and clears everything, so you don't have anything that pretty much nothing is saved. So once the file has been deleted, we want to create a new file, right? So we basically just say in this current folder, create the new config file, and this is where the magic happens, right? The config that we are passing in, which is literally this here, right? And if you remember, this is just JSON, right? And here we just parse it as a JSON object, and once we do that, we have to convert it to YAML. So after the file has been created, we can start another shell session and just make sure to, just add all the changes that we've done to our Git, and then we commit them. Once they're committed, we just push. We push to the Git repository, and that's pretty much it. So this is how the function works. This hasn't taken me too long to complete. It's not that big of a deal. So let me show you what else I've done on the UI side. As you can see, I've done some redesigning. Right, I've moved the logo here, and also the new stack. Oh, the new stack is here, and the user is going to be right here, and these effects are here as well now. If you press, if you click here, you'll see that you can edit the stack name here. Right, so the name changes right here. This here is also working. That's also great. This is actually taking the data from the database, right? So I can currently set up account on the backend, right? So through the Lambda function, that's not all that important, but the fact of the matter is I can pull the data and display it on the UI. So what I have to do next is, obviously, if you click here, you'll be able to see the stuff that you need to type in, right? So you will be able to modify every account. You'll be able to change the name, the keys, the access keys, and you will also need to add your credentials to enter the Git repository, right? So in order to have the access to your Git repository, you will have to put your username and password here that will be able to access the Git. Okay, the last thing that actually then needs to be done is I have to set up the stacks, but I mean the real stacks with the real Terraform code. And once I'm able to pull these, we're pretty much done. So just to recap, you will now be able to change the stack info here and your own info, you'll be able to change here. Okay. So the question is, when am I going to release this change so that you can finally go and set up your accounts, right? You'll be able to see your accounts here, and you'll be able to see your stacks here, right? You'll be designing them, like I said, here. Once they're saved, you'll be able to see them here. And once you're satisfied with what you've designed, you just promote them to an application, you build, and you have your infrastructure set up for you. So the question is, the first part, right? Just setting up accounts and saving stacks. That's the milestone. When am I going to release this? I don't know. I'm actually aiming for end of this month. And yeah, guys, so that's pretty much it for this time. Thanks a lot for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The progress seems to be pretty good. So it's not just that what I'm building is going quite fast, and it's actually the adoption rate that I like. People seem to be signing up, right? Even though I don't have any features just yet. And yeah, the channel also seems to be growing. So I'm pretty satisfied with where things are heading. So thanks a lot for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.